Hey, Kimberly, isn't there a grant for that?
Gee, I've never heard that one before.
Well, that is certainly a running joke among us grant pros. People assume there is a ready made grant for anything they can dream up.
Understanding what grants can or can't do for your organization is important, not just for grant writers, but also for leaders, staff, board members, pretty much anyone involved.
Yep. And knowing when to say no is just as important as knowing when to say yes to the right grant opportunity. Sometimes these conversations aren't easy. Ask me how I know. And sometimes bringing in a neutral party helps facilitate these difficult conversations.
The team at D.H. Leonard Consulting helps train grant teams in how to approach these strategic decisions. Reach out to them at dhleonardconsulting.com to learn more. Well, hello there. I'm Kimberly Haysemuga,
And I'm Amanda Day,
and you're listening to
the Fundraising Heyday Podcast.
We're here to help you make sense of the complex world of grant writing and fundraising, including the how-tos, how to raise more money, how to win more grants, but also how we can work together to change philanthropy for the better.
That's true. We drop new episodes every 2 weeks, and they typically include some cheesy songs and sound effects and rants and all kinds of things
Because that's who we are.
Boring.
That's right. That's right on all accounts. This podcast is brought to you by our Season 6 sponsor, D.H. Leonard Consulting and Grant Writing Services. Their team can help make grants less stressful by assisting you with grant readiness and training, grant research, grant writing, mock review, as well as providing numerous DIY resources, guides, and templates. Don't let grants stress you out. Did you know that with every Fundraising Heyday episode, we create a coordinating blog post on their website, dhleonardconsulting.com. Check it out today.
Well, happy Thursday, my friends. Okay, random thought here, but Thursdays has always been one of my favorite days of the week.
Okay.
Why? Let's see.
I'll bite. Why?
In college, that was the night we always went out dancing, right?
Okay.
So that was Thursday nights were something to look forward
Because
to.
Fridays were reserved for deep contemplation.
There was always they always had like deals on Thursday. We just always Thursday night would go out dancing.
Fair enough.
The night we went. So Thursdays were fun, and plus Fridays you're like practically at the weekend. It's just great, right?
Okay.
And then
Friday.
later in life, for a while, I was really obsessed with Survivor. That came on Thursday nights.
Fair.
So that was
Fair.
Fair. Going from clubbing to watching Survivor at home, but
it's a process.
It's a process.
She was on a journey.
It was, and it's the little things also, right? Plus to me, again, especially by the time Thursday night rolls around, like the weekend's practically here, we can taste it, touch it.
Okay.
Fridays are usually a good day. Even a busy day, I'll work Friday. At least it's the last one.
I can feel your emotions about this.
And now Thursdays are when Fundraising Heyday drops, so it's just a great day.
What's not to love?
Oh.
But that a random tangent, but not unwelcome.
I know. So sorry about that. But how about we jump into the heart of the matter today, shall we? I was recently speaking with a fellow grant consultant about a nonprofit that had done some restructuring.
Not me. It was not. That was not.
No, it was not. It truly was a friend.
Because I'm not.
No. Let me rephrase that. It really was a friend that wasn't Kimberly. It was Kimberly's my friend, but I have other friends. Okay, I'm just making it worse.
Way to dig yourself deeper. I'm here for you. Preach on, my friend.
Can we go back in time and do this over again? So I was talking to a grant professional that was not Kimberly about a nonprofit that had recently done some reorganization. And so the grant professional was reporting to, I think it's like a director of development or some position like that. And their boss basically admitted, I really know nothing about grants, so I don't really know how to help you. I don't know how to manage you. I don't know, I don't know about grants. So this is a struggle for me, right? And it just got
at least this person admitted it. Although I'm also good leadership and management is good leadership and management, but okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think it was more I can manage you as a person in a position, but I don't know what's the how many grants should you be writing, and if we're getting a lot of denials,
fair.
How can
Okay,
I help you
I got
with
you.
that? Just the grant specific stuff, right? And it just got me thinking about how many bosses actually do understand the world of grants? And so I thought it'd be a good topic to talk about, like, if in an ideal world, these are the things that my boss would know about grants.
I think, I mean, that's a really good point. And having now a recovering development director, I came at it from grants and then added on the other experiences, but I started in grants. But a lot of fundraising professionals we've had on our podcast have started from writing grants and
Yeah.
moved over. But if they haven't, grants can feel like this kind of strange area.
Yeah.
Because it is, although it's all about making connections, no matter whether you're hosting an event or talking one-on-one with a major donor about a new wing at your school or whatever. It's all about building connections. It's just that happens in different ways.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of myths around how grants work. And if you are reporting to somebody who has not a clue, it can cause, as we'll go into, a lot of unreasonable expectations.
Yeah.
And in some cases, maybe even some mismanagement through ignorance. So
that's true.
It is important to make sure that people know how they work.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, not everybody is even reporting to a development director that's even sort of in that sort of same world, right? You could be reporting to someone from finance, or
you could be a program
director.
person who's writing grants as your other duties as assigned, kind of thing.
Yeah. I know one of my longest stints when I was hired by the city of Alpharetta, when I first started working there, I reported directly to our city administrator, and later they created an assistant administrator, and so I reported to them. So when I first started in Alpharetta, I vividly remember my city administrator, who was an awesome, awesome boss. But he was like, "Look, we're hiring you because really nobody here knows anything about grants, right? And they had a bad OIG audit, and they didn't want that to happen. So they knew enough to know, like, we don't want this to happen again. We want to hire an expert."
Yep.
And so he's like, "So we've hired you," but he was like, "And my door's always open. You can come to me for anything, but I really don't know a lot about grants." And so I came to him for things, and he always was a great listener. And he was famous for, "What do you think you should do about this?" Trying to get you to think through these things. And of course, my answer usually is, by the time I'm coming to you, I'm exhausted all
Need
of the
some ideas, my man.
My solution is ask you. But the reality is, I could go to him for personnel things. I could go to him for leadership issues. If we had a matching problem, he could help with that. He knew finances. But if I had a specific grant question, he was not like the person. Yeah, I mean, that's usually I was talking to other grant people, right, or program people. So you can have a great boss who is still a great boss, but still not understand the world of grants.
I think what I love so much about this story is that he knew what he didn't know, and he was okay with that.
Yes.
That can be rare. You could have someone who says, "I don't know anything about grants, but yet you need to do this, 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 and this." Or that person could not be a boss. The person could be a board member or two. Yeah. Because let's face it. But yeah, we've been there. We've been there in different ways with different people about different things. Absolutely. But it all comes down to, how can you, if you are a grant pro, or you're focused on writing grants and you're understanding how they work, how can you make sure that your boss understands? Or what are some things that we would just love for people to be open to learning about grants, absolutely, even if they're not writing them directly? I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind is, because, and I realize I'm preaching to the choir, not only to you, but to people listening or watching this, but it's like, you may not be able to raise more money in grants every single year. Yeah. You could, now, if you're just starting out though, and your organization is well positioned, well run, has a good reputation, and they have connections through your board or your leadership or your volunteers. If you have good community connections, and you could, in your first 5 to 7 years of writing grants, you could grow. But if all of those things are not in place, or if one year you get $5 million multi-year grant, but it's awarded depending on your accounting practices. Yeah. I've had this kind of sort of happen. You can be told, well, you brought on all this money. It's like, my dude, that money was $5 million over 3 years. every year we're not going to be able to bring in a $5 million grant, depending on your organization and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But there seems to be this expectation that it's grow, grow, grow. And sometimes I've found at rates that far exceed expectations for giant businesses or even world economies. Just going to say that. Yeah. Because if you're saying, hey, every year, and I've been in this situation, every year my goal went up by like 25% every year.
Holy cow.
Every year. I hit it most years, but you'll notice I'm no longer doing that kind of work because sleep is a good thing. Sleep is beautiful and stress-free life. It was a great organization doing great work, still in existence, fabulous reputation. But it was like, wait. And this was outside of like huge capital grants, right? Yeah. This was just like regular program, general operating, projects, equipment, things like that. It's like that kind of, what business it every year experiences 25% growth, right?
Well, and at some point, like not every funder funds every type of organization. So at some point you're going to hit the max on funders.
Or you could grow other areas, or you could look at larger scale grants. Is it time for us to, are we able to scale up and go after huge federal and state grants? Is that a good, are we there or are we not there? But what economy, what world economy is like 25% growth every year? They are lying. Yeah. And if it's 25% growth for a company one year, I guarantee you the next year, it's not going to be 30.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for example, during the pandemic, there were tech companies, as we're recording this in 2023, there are tech companies that experienced huge hiring, huge growth. I mean, Amazon, social media companies. And now in 2023, those same tech companies are laying off people because what was growing their business during the pandemic is no longer so much the norm.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I find it, and another thing, while I'm ranty, no, but I don't want to get too far off the tangent here, but it's like those people who come out and say, again, this is not it is things I wish my boss knows, especially if my boss is coming from a not nonprofit sector or outside of local government. It's like, well, we just need to run this more like a business. I don't know why that person speaks in that tone of voice, but I think we actually all do know, don't we? But hey, things that it's, first of all, it's not the same thing. And second of all, I would like to see some really bold examples of a caring yet profitable, consistently building over time company that's not without scandal and doesn't abuse its workers and the corporate. Why don't you show me that company as an example of what to be? And also throw in that 25% grant revenue increase every year. Show me that company.
Yeah.
Just put it in the comments. Just let me know. Okay, I'm done for now.
Yes. We got lots to talk about.
Oh, thoughts and feelings.
The next thing on our list is that, grant professionals, we really do want to be successful. I mean, we don't like getting rejection letters from funders. At least I don't.
If you do, keep okay, but that is the exception.
Yes, I mean,
everybody has their thing.
Yeah. But for any grant professional to be successful, what we need is that team.
It's a team.
It's a team effort. Because nobody can sit in a corner by themselves. Nobody's putting baby in the corner. Okay. Can't sit there and write grants.
I had the grant of my life. Sorry.
I love it. But I don't care how good you are, if you don't know what the program people are doing, if you don't know what your budget is, if you don't, it is a team effort every time. And even though you may be doing 99% of the writing, it's going to take information and assistance from other people within your organization, from leadership all the way down to even talking to clients, right? So I want them to understand that it's not just, I've hired you and you're just going to do it all.
We've hired, you're the grant writer.
Yeah.
You're the grant writer. So just write grants. Someone say, you're a grant writer, so you just write letters all day. I was not arrested for punching this person in the throat, but I did think about it.
Yep.
Thought about it. In foundation funding, which is where I got my start in private funding versus public funding. It is a lot about building relationships with funders. Not every grant, not every time. You could have national banks, for example, that have online portals, and you may never talk to a person. But on the other hand, you may have family foundations and other local corporate foundations where it's really important to build those relationships and have those volunteers and have that fundraising. A lot of times I've heard people say, well, you're the grant writer, just go do it. And maybe your executive director doesn't want to go out and help build relationships, or your board members are like, just write more grants. But they may not realize that a part of that might be reaching out when appropriate to relationships that they may have with trustees or program officers or something like that. It kind of gets into that 80-20 that I'm always preaching about, that 20% is actually writing the grants and 80% is doing all this other stuff. And I wish that's something more board members and bosses would know.
Understand. Absolutely. Yep. Another thing is that, again, going back to like, we want to be successful, we're not grant writers at nonprofits and other organizations because we're making, millions of dollars. Usually there's...
If you are, please call me.
Is there an opening?
Fair.
But usually part of it's because we really do enjoy and appreciate the mission and the work that is being done. And so we're excited to be a part of that. But even though that's true, we love the mission and we're happy to give back in that way. There's only so many hours in the day, right? So you can't write every single grant that comes across your desk.
Nor should you.
And so what that really means is you need together, you and leadership need to figure out what the funding priorities are, what the grant priorities are. Or if there's a season where it's like, oh my gosh, these 8 grants, they're all federal and they're all due within 45 days, but they all are vital to the success of our programming. Okay. But you can't expect one person to do that, right? So then it's, okay.
And not expect to keep them on your staff.
Keep them sane, right? So at that point, it's like, okay, we need to bring in reinforcements. So are we hiring other consultants to come in and help with some of the work? Mm-hmm. Do we have other members on staff who are good at writing? So maybe the grant professional is kind of overseeing everything, but maybe if you've got marketing people, if you just happen to have an admin assistant who's really good at writing, maybe they're doing some of the work too, to assist during that crazy time. So you can't expect your grant professionals to be like, well, sorry, it's busy grant season. So enjoy working. Enjoy working 100 hours the next 5 weeks. Get it done.
No, I mean, although I have to say that happens a lot.
It does.
And I think that's a lot of reason where there are people who are like, I don't want to write grants anymore. It's too much.
You're burnt out and you're going to lose. Especially you've got a good grant professional who knows your organization. Because I mean, I'm good at what I do, but if you hired me to come in and be a consultant for your organization, it's going to take me some time before I can start writing for you, just because I've got to get a handle on your programs, your budget, and all those things. Versus if you've got a consultant you've had on staff for 5 years who just knows that intrinsically.
Like, you mean like an employee on staff?
Yeah, an employee on staff who just knows that. You're losing.
There's some institutional knowledge.
Yes.
There's there are all kinds of reasons why, if you're able to support a full-time grant writer by the revenue bringing, you want them.
You want to do that.
If they're good at what they do, you want them to stick around. So and we say this as consultants.
Yes.
Also, I would love it. I would love it. If because of my job, when I'm looking at a grant opportunity and I say, look, we're eligible but not competitive. If you know me and I've been doing good work for you in whatever capacity, as an employee, as a consultant, can you please just take my word for it? Can you do that for me? Because I'm the one that's read the fine print and I'm here to tell you. And I've told clients this, and I've had some interesting discussions with with EDs or someone in the C-suite at places where I've worked.
Yeah.
Especially earlier on in my career, where I was just like, look, this is because of this and that. Yeah, we're eligible because we're a nonprofit, but we're not. I mean, it's like a nonprofit can apply. Fantastic. I mean, that's like people can apply to be to
be a doctor,
audition for the New York City Ballet,
yeah,
or the Rockettes or something. Yeah, I could apply because I'm a person. Am I the best fit? No. I mean, it's like, that's such a time waster. And I'm going to do a quick shameless plug.
Go for it.
Because we feel so strongly about this point. On our website, heydayservices.com, we have a freebie download that's our go, no-go decision-making guide. Because while I would love for people to just accept my expertise and take me at my word and just listen, because I have been doing this for more than 25 years and I want you to do the same thing, be able to have the same thing. It's not always the case. And sometimes you can just spend a lot of unproductive time in email conversations about, well, but they should fund us. We're so good. It's like, that is not the point.
Yeah.
If you do not serve in county X and they only fund in county X, what are we doing? What are we doing? I've used a version of this form, and there are other versions floating around. Of course, we like ours because it's ours, but codifying it a little and having a form. I'm not a fan of extra paperwork, but it's helped me go, yeah, let me take a look at that. And then it's like a series of yes or no questions.
Yep.
And then you can write your recommendations at the bottom. That has saved me so much time, because a lot of times I'll get an ED now that's like, well, what about this or that? And it's because a board member has said, look, there's this thing. A quick recent example where they were eligible, but it was, I don't necessarily want to name the company because I'm getting ready to go off on them, but it was a farm equipment manufacturer.
Okay.
And they said that they were giving away, was it a $500,000 or $1 million to community nonprofits? And I'm like, okay, this nonprofit happens to be in a community. Tell me more. I'm going through. But as it turns out, they were maybe it was $600,000, because they have 6 regions that their company serves, mainly in the United States, right?
Okay.
I don't know, Northeast, Mid, South, whatever. Those geographic things. Well, they were giving one $100,000 grant in each of those regions, which consisted of at least 4 to 6 states. So are you feeling me now? I'm like, now wait just a darn minute. So any nonprofit in a community that hit some of their areas, which were kind of broad, could apply. And it was general operating, sort of, kind of.
Yeah.
But in a 6-state area, this client was located in a 6-state area that I'm now indicating with my hands. And they, no rhyme or reason about who could apply $100,000 and across one grant across 6 states. So part of my analysis was, hey, you know what? We have 4 other deadlines this month that are all more competitive. I mean, better fits in terms of competition, because there was more money to be had. Listen, if someone wants to drop $100,000 on me or a nonprofit I work with, I'll say, welcome, hello, thank you, hi there. But if you're having to do, they would pay me to write this grant where they might have, I mean, it was kind of like lottery odds in I mean,
well, even if only 100 nonprofits apply, which there's going to be more than that.
There's going to be more.
That's you have a 1% chance of making it at 100. Those aren't good odds, and it's going to be
not great odds.
Lots of nonprofits.
So
apply.
But in the years past, I might be like, why won't they listen to me? I know. But now I'm like, I know. Let's put it in this form. Here. Hi, send that to your board members. And then it's like, oh, it's a lot. It takes like any frustration or any sort of, I'm not about sucking all emotions out of life, but I'm not, because I'm an intense person with intense feelings. But in this particular case, it's better if you could document it in a way that's like, okay, here's why.
Yeah.
And if they still want to move forward after that, okay. But I just wish that more bosses and board members could go, oh, we understand the difference between base eligibility and actually a good fit, and more importantly, how likely are we to succeed?
Absolutely.
Wishing, hoping, dreaming.
I know. So, something I really feel strongly about and wish more bosses and boards understood this is that grant management is really even more important than grant writing. Right?
It's true. I had palpitations even thinking about it.
Yes. And grant management can be as simple as, hey, you've got a funder who gives you a check and all they ask for is a one-page letter at the end of the year to let you, hey.
There are a lot of private funders. That's how they roll.
That's still super important. Then you've also got federal grants where you're having to do narrative reports every month and financial reports every month. And you may have to be following 12 different, the Davis-Bacon Wage Act has paperwork and the da-da-da-da. So it could, your results may vary, your mileage may vary when it comes to grant management. It is still so much more important than grant writing because you already have that funding. It's a guarantee. It's yours unless you mess up, right? So you want to do everything you can to keep it. And also, if you want to get future money from that funder, you got to show them that you're willing to follow all the rules.
And grant writing is, the process of developing a proposal is important.
It is.
And it's essential to getting money.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right. Most people are like, we got the money. And I'm like, now you got to spend the money. Because how many times have you gotten the grant? I'm thinking about some stories you've told me for different places you're working. It's like, okay, y'all, how you doing? Are we spending? Are we spending? Are we achieving outcomes? Are there outcomes to be had? Is there a program? And it's like, before it was like, we need the money. You raise money. I'm like, I raise the money. Where are my outcomes? It's a real problem.
It really is. Well, and it goes back to also you're talking about there's only so many hours in the day, right? So like when I first got to Alpharetta, they had a few grants, but not a whole lot. And they were already in the middle of managing them and we're doing a good job with the ones they had. So I really I helped, but I wasn't uber involved. And so the first year or two I was there, I was cranking out. And mostly I'm writing big federal and state grants.
Well, because you're working for a local, a city.
A city. So like the first year or two, I was writing like 30 applications, right? Because I wasn't spending any time managing it. But then these awards started coming in. And so suddenly I'm like, I can't write 30 proposals when I'm also managing. And so had same boss who was like, my door's always open. Let me know. And so I just went to him and was like, hey, either we need to hire a second person and one takes, and I was like, to begin with, it may just be part-time. One can handle the management part-time and I can keep cranking out this many grants. I said, or if you're not going to hire anybody else, that's fine. I cannot write that many grants. And so I cut back and was probably then writing around 10 or 12 a year. And then with doing all, because again, federal grant management is pretty time intensive.
Yeah.
And a lot of like, where are my outcomes? Where are my outcomes? Where are my receipts? Where am I this? Right. And so thankfully I had a boss that got it and was okay with that.
But you were also able to explain it to him because y'all had that open communication. That is not always the case because you could get shut down going, well, you'll just manage it too. You're the grant writer. And it's like,
they won't take much time. Just keep writing.
And you need to bring in 25% more next year and manage all the grants. It's like, y'all, come on. That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
Yep.
And another thing that comes up along with grant management is to help people understand we can bring in this money, but if it's not a good fit from the get-go, let me rephrase. If it is a good fit according to the application, but it may or may not be the thrust of your overall organization and you can't manage it correctly and you want to take that money and put it somewhere else because all of a sudden the roof is leaking. You can't do that with grants. Yes, you can do redirects. Yes, you can
budget amendments.
You can, but you probably want to try to not do that. But more importantly, the having to have those conversations with people who in the organization, not in your value as a human being, but in the organization may outrank you, who are like, well, it's our money now. We can do, it's like, yes and no. You could choose, I'm trying to think of how this would even work. If you got a loan for a car, I guess, no, you really couldn't. Or a mortgage, you have to buy a house with that. This is me not knowing how sometimes money works, so I'm sorry. But it's kind of the same thing, right? You're getting a grant. You can't just go, we were going to expand this program and provide more health services. But, we actually need to buy a van. So that's what we're going to do. It's like, no. Yeah. And I've also gotten pushback from board members about this. And look, I'm not knocking all board members, but you are leading an organization and making strategic decisions, and you are a leader in your community or your business or your expertise, but you may or may not know about nonprofits. Just putting that out there. You may want to listen to people who do know. And it's not me making up the rules. It's in the grant agreement that our executive director signed. And it's just helping people understand, because if you do come from a business environment, you may not be used to that kind of accounting or that kind of revenue that has so many strings attached. And it's like, we don't want you to go to jail. I'm not going to jail for this. Nobody's going to jail, but it's not just free money that can be shunted to another need.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very true.
Bottom line.
Yep. Another thing I would say is that professional development is really vital to our success. So, especially with federal funding changes all the time. I mean, there are some grants that have been around for a long time.
Especially in the last 5 years, especially with the advent of the pandemic. But it's gone up and down like this before. But it feels like it's going a little faster now.
And so you need to give, and some of it's free, right? A lot of federal funding programs offer webinars and different online trainings that are free, but it's still, that's time for your person. And if they're doing that, they're not writing grants. And so, but they need to do that to be able to successfully write the next grant. So you need to give them the time to, participate in those sorts of things. Hopefully you can set aside a little bit of money for them to go. I mean, because even, there's been a lot of talk lately about how we introduce people we're serving, right? Used to you would just talk about, well, we're helping the homeless population. Well, we don't use that verbiage anymore. Now it's people who struggle with housing needs or
housing insecure.
It's not the hungry, it's people who, need.
Listen, over the years, when you think about over the decades about the language that we use to refer to ourselves, or more importantly, people who do not look like us or live like us or anything like that, there have been, I would say, huge improvements, but there's a long way to go. And it's important to stay, that's just important to be a good human being.
It is.
But it's also important to understand, not only in grants, but in other aspects of fundraising, or just how you refer to the people that you say you're there to serve.
Exactly.
And that's professional development, understanding that.
Yeah. Because otherwise, if you've got your person sitting in the corner writing grants and they're not getting out there, then they're not going to know that the language has changed. And so now your organization is submitting application.
Or they're not exposed to those kinds of ideas.
Exactly.
And especially if they're not reflecting the communities they serve.
Absolutely.
It's just so important.
Yeah. And more than that too, it's not just, they've got to go to a conference. Well, maybe they're just meeting with other grant professionals. For the longest time before I found the Grant Professionals Association, there were 4 or 5 of us that all wrote grants for local governments that we met for lunch once a month. And because we were so spread out, I'd be gone for about 3 hours, because by the time I drove to where we were meeting, and it wasn't just, yes, we'd do it around a meal, but we'd spend about an hour or more talking, like, what grants are you working with? What are you struggling with? And we learned from each other that way. And again, very fortunate, I had a boss who was like, this isn't just a man is taking a 3-hour lunch. This is a professional. It really was professional development.
No, it was.
I'm learning. But not every boss organization will understand that and will be like, no, you're goofing off. When really I was learning a lot from people who had been doing the job longer than I had. I was getting free mentoring, really.
Absolutely.
Free coaching, and which was a fabulous thing. So you need to understand that. So
it's it kind of ties into, and I've already said this already, and I'll say it again, and it'll be on another podcast, and maybe there'll be a t-shirt about this one day. I don't even know, but grant writing, about 80% of grant writing isn't writing at all. It's gathering information, making connections, learning more about either the issues surrounding the communities you serve, or the technical aspects of grant writing or fundraising, whatever it is you're doing. And so the idea that if you're not at your desk all day long writing grants, unless you have, and I'm trying to, because always somebody's gonna be like, well, I sit at my desk all day, and they may even say it in that tone of voice, which is their choice. But unless you have that, someone then is doing that. This is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If you're not talking to program folks, gathering data, going to the census website, downloading stuff and looking at it. If you're truly writing, there's someone else that's running around and doing all that so that all you do is sit and write.
Yeah.
But those other things have to happen. Those forms need to get signed. The letters of support, somebody needs to track them and mail them and email them and do all those things. So, and also, unless you're an expert on every single thing you have ever written a grant about, you need to make sure you're using that right language to talk. So I think that's something that we wish bosses, mayors, chiefs, board members understood, is that to write a grant is not like the C-suite person said to me one day, oh, you just write letters all day. And it's like, my dude. And
well, we have a fellow grant colleague who, when they moved, she used to report to, worked in local government, used to report to like a county manager or something, got moved into the finance department because grants money, that made sense to them, right? And so suddenly she's working around people who are doing budgets and doing accounting, which these people typically are sitting at their desk.
Fair. That is I get it.
And the finance director would get on to her, be like, why weren't you at your desk? And she's like, well, I was at the fire chief's office. Well, why'd you have to go over there? And she's like, well, I'm working on a grant with him. I need information from him. Well, I don't understand why that couldn't have just been a phone call. And she's like, sometimes face to face, I can.
People who are first responders, again, I'm sorry, I'm getting ready to do a slight generalization, they're not always available on the phone. And if your job is very different and it's not a desk job and you're not in meetings all the time, you may or may not, it may be better to talk in person. I mean, just for communication.
Just didn't get that. Well, and I think it goes back to, our last episode we dropped was talking about, working with introverts and extroverts. And part of that too, not just introvert and extrovert, but knowing what medium is going to make whoever you're talking to the most comfortable, so you can get the most information. Lady I used to work with, she was our city's arborist, and we had a lot of projects involving tree
makes sense.
It does, yeah. She's the arborist. And what's interesting is for her, because her office was always, people were coming. It was like whenever we would try to meet in her office, which because her preferred was face to face, it was just it would take us forever. And so one day she was like, what? She's like, what are you doing for lunch today? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, why don't we go meet at this, we picked a quiet sandwich shop. So we had lunch, talked for a few minutes, and then we broke on our work and we sat there and we got stuff done because her phone wasn't ringing off the hook. People weren't coming by because nobody knew where, in Boston, I told them where I was going, but it's not like people are going to come hunt us down in that regard. And so that's what we started doing from here on out when she and I needed to really get down. Because, no offense. I can write about a lot of things, but the health of trees is not in my wheelhouse. So I really needed a lot of information.
And, maybe you could watch a video about it, but wouldn't it be better to talk to the expert?
She's the one that's going to be managing the program.
Exactly.
So, yes. And again, so fortunately I had a boss who understood that. And so did she.
That is not always
the case. We were able to get the work done that way. And so part of it is meeting people where they are. And that's not always sitting at your desk.
Also, for me, if I can see and experience something, I'm going to be able to describe it better with words, using my words.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So another thing I'd like to talk about is that nobody has a 100% success rate.
And, usually I'm trying to find the exception. Screw that. I am sorry. Well, if you have been writing grants for more than a minute, you have had to have some rejection, or you are only writing one grant a year to this family foundation that just needs you to write a letter all day and send them and get. I have such deep feelings about this. Mm-hmm. And people who say success rates trying not to rant, success rates, you have to look at what you're measuring. Yeah. Right? If you are only writing the same 3 state grants every year that are like always get funded.
Yeah.
Okay. That's could be a high success rate, but I think you can also look at it as how much new money are you bringing in? How, and how, are you going for larger scale grants? Or are you just writing the same 3 grants every year? Mm-hmm. if you are a consultant and you're telling your clients that you have 100% success rate, I'm just, if you're not watching, I'm just kind of side eyeing the camera here because I'm like,
yeah. Well, and the reason I like to point this out here specifically when it comes to discussions with your bosses,
why didn't you get the grant?
Yeah,
why didn't you get the grant? You're a grant writer.
Yeah, grants are competitive, and yes, we can help as far as going, yes, we're eligible, but we're not competitive, so this is probably not a good fit. But even if we do say yes, we're eligible and we are competitive,
doesn't mean
that's not a guarantee, because again, like Kimberly says, that grant, 6 states, only one grant, you could have impressive, you could have been number 2 on the list,
and you're still number 2
funded, right? And so, and heck, the top 50 applicants could have been amazing programs and deserving of $100,000, but there's only so much money to give. So just know that we don't have a crystal ball. We're not going to get all of them.
Well, and there's so many things outside of your control, which is something, if you're not familiar with grants, I wish you would be open to learning. If you're in that position, is you could write an exquisite grant and it could be a great program, but you never know what's going on behind the scenes, even with state and federal programs where it's a grant review process. It's like, you don't know. And particularly with private funding, it's not transparent at all a lot of the time. So you don't know what's going into those decisions, or whether or not they've sort of quasi-committed a certain amount of funding to an agency that does kind of what you do, but they didn't want to say no. But there are just so many things that are out of your control.
And now I'm not saying if one end is, I always get my grants, the other end is I hardly ever get a grant. I'm not, and if someone's like, they're not getting the grants because they're missing deadlines, they're not submitting complete applications because they're not reading the fine print. Okay, that's a whole other thing and a whole other problem, right? So I'm not saying forgive everything, but I am saying that no grant writer is going to get every grant. And so there needs to be some understanding of that. Just like weathermen do not predict the weather 100% of the time.
Meteorologists not 100%
and yet they're still employed. So I mean, there needs to be some grace on these sorts of things.
And reality.
Yeah, well, that too.
How about some reality? God, I feel like we could just talk about this all day. Including this is just a big thing of mine, is because as grant professionals or as fundraisers or whatever role you may play in that, because you know a lot about what goes on in the organization, because you may be gathering information to help others connect, whether it's grant reviewers or donors, whoever it may be, to connect to what it is you do, you have a unique overview of the organization that a lot of employees don't have. And as a consultant too, you're able to see things at a different level just because you are sort of working across, if there are multiple programs, for example. So I feel like I would wish that bosses, board ADs, whoever, would have an understanding of that value. And some of that's an educate up thing on our part, the people who are doing this kind of work, because sometimes we don't realize, like sometimes you just don't know. Writing for me has always been something that's come fairly easily. I've been super privileged. When I was growing up, my parents were all about books, all about reading to me. I read to myself. Then I was reading, verbal, highly verbal, going to school, getting it done. And so for me to dash off an email about a kind of complex topic, or do it just, it comes, it's like, I'm like, oh, but what I didn't realize for a long time in my field was I knew, for example, when I worked at the food bank, I knew a little bit about all the programs, right? Because I was funding all the programs. And so when it came to looking at strategy or budget planning, it just took me a few years to grow into this understanding of, oh, wait, I do have this kind of knowledge to share, and I can see these trends, and I can marry the internal trends with the external funding trends to sort of make that happen. So I would just, that's something that I wish more folks could understand, whether or not they're actually writing the grants, but if they're supervising and being over that department.
Yep, very true. And I would say, kind of sort of in that same vein, but when it comes to strategic planning, is, grants they're not a fast solution to funding problems. They shouldn't be the biggest part of your funding.
there are exceptions to that, but generally speaking,
yes.
should not be. You should not be entirely grant dependent.
Yes,
big mistake.
So you need a strategic plan, and you need sustainability. You need to understand if the grant doesn't fund it, how are we going to fund these programs that are so vital to our community? And I'm not going to belabor the point because you can go back to season 5, episode 11. We've got a how-to all about sustagirl.
She is quoting the seasons. I'm loving it. She got episodes. I
thought to look things up beforehand. Sometimes I plan.
Girl, you're talking crazy now.
No, but just your boss needs to understand that grants cannot be the end all be all to your financial woes. So
I don't know how many clients I've had that discussion with. It's like, let's get you some grants, but you could be bringing in some individual support that can support you in those years where you might not get a grant because maybe there's a big changeover in funding. Maybe there's a big emergency or pandemic and people all pull their funding to deal with that emergency. But it's 100% in agreement.
Yeah. So, and kind of sort of along those same lines, can't assume that the same grant is going to fund you forever. And I don't care if you're like, we've had the same grant for 50 years. Okay, great.
Yeah, year 51. Have a nice day.
Exactly. So just don't make that assumption. Going back to sustainability is really, really important. So anyway.
So I think we have moved through quite the list.
Yes.
And we didn't cover every single thing. We didn't cover every single thing we wanted to talk about because there's just lots of stuff. But if we missed something that you're like, I can't believe you missed that, please drop us a line at hello at Hayday Services. That's HAYDAY services.com and let us know, okay? Because we may need to do another episode about this.
All the things we missed.
All the things.
Yes. So we really would love to hear from you. And if you happen to work someplace where your boss just doesn't get it, we don't want to leave you hanging. We
got some solutions.
We always like to offer solutions.
We ranted, and now we're going to help problem solve.
Here's some ways you can educate your boss. First of all, you can invite them to come to a grant training with you.
Could be online.
Could be
Easy peasy.
Could be the Grant Professional Association conference. Could be a 2-day workshop led by crazy people, celebrity grant trainers.
We don't even know. We don't even know.
Let me tell you, anytime I teach a class, I've occasionally had a mayor in my class or a board member.
It's the best.
First of all, I'm always like, thank you for being here. And usually they're like, well, we're just trying to better understand what we're getting ourselves into. I'm
welcome.
Like, fabulous. You're my people. So just so they can come and see like, oh, this isn't just, they're not writing a grant in 1 hour in the corner and that's all they do all day. They get a better picture of it.
Although that would be plenty if you were just able to do that and crank in the mind. We're not disparaging that.
No, I'm not that. But that's not all. That's not all.
That's not all the everything.
Right?
No,
so I think that could be a good thing to do. You could set up some regular meetings with your boss. Like if you've got someone who's like, I don't know about grants. Well, let me teach you.
I'm feeling a moment to pop in here and go. I think it's a good business practice. So when I was a director and a manager, and when I was managing people, it was every week.
Yeah.
Now, if you are supervising a team of 35, that may not work for you. But if it does work for you, I would meet with your direct reports once a week and tell them it's their time, set it up. They have the agenda. They drive it. That's just, you're going to learn a lot. And that is if you want to suggest that to your boss, it's like that would be an easy way. It's time bound. It could be 45 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour.
Yeah.
And it's there every week. And that could be a time to drop in some of these things that we've talked about.
Absolutely.
But if you're supervising people, you would be amazed at how much more productive things can be if you just sit down and listen and help them problem solve and then support and praise them for the things that they've done. I'm just saying. Quick plug.
Well, and another option is if you actually have a grant team meeting regularly, you could invite your boss to attend that. So rather than you one-on-one, that they can sit in and learn from you guys that way. I would love to do this is pick an application you've recently done, right? And I'd go for your juiciest, most headache of an application. Hand over a blank application and those guidelines and ask your boss to fill it out and give them 30 days to do it.
She's bold, ladies and gentlemen. Amanda Day.
I know. I mean, this is not something I would just like drop on their desk, like, I command you to fill this out. But you could say, like, hey, if you're wanting to better understand what it's like, give a go on your own of filling this out, and
or you could even share a blank application at a team meeting or board meeting and go, welcome, this is what it's like. Also, I would love it, funders, if you're listening, could you please
try that?
Could you please try that with your own application portals? Thank you. Love me. Thank you.
And then if you're in leadership, or if you're in, hopefully you do have that seat at the leadership table. But if that leadership team, if they're meeting once a month or whatever, that could be a time where you can come and do a presentation and talk to them. And if you've not been invited, ask, right?
And you could once every year in June, but mid-June, Giving USA publishes their annual Giving Trends, and it's the Lilly School of Philanthropy at Indiana University.
Yes.
And you can find that online. They have a free infographic, or you can pay if you want and get access to their deck and all their things. But the reason why I'm saying that is that's trusted information about giving trends that includes why you shouldn't rely on grants. It includes how much money goes out and to whom. That is for the nonprofit arena and charitable donations. It does not include federal giving. But that could be an easy way to share a little bit of education about what grants are and aren't, and what giving trends are.
Yeah. Well, and if you're like, that's great, but I work with federal funds, well, then go to usaspending.gov.
True that.
And you can look up for your state and see the top 5 grant funders, top 5 grant recipients, which are all going to be state agencies. It's not going to, even in Georgia,
no surprises
it's not the
there.
City of Atlanta.
No.
It is our, and maybe the University of Georgia could end up on there, but it's usually like your state Department of Health, your state Department of Transportation. And you can see how much money is coming into your state from grants. You can see it over, I think it goes back about 10 years worth of data now or so. But you're right. That's a great way to kind of set expectations for even because if they're like, you should be getting $10 million, and you're like, the biggest funder only gets $10 million. So there's no way our city of 30,000 people is going to be getting that.
And it can just be education. Yeah. And it's an external trusted source, not that you yourself, that we're not trustworthy, but you know what I'm talking about. It's going to be easier giving that information, particularly to people who aren't receptive.
Absolutely. To
go, hey, here are these trusted sources. Here's some examples, and easy to share and free.
Yep. So we know today's podcast was a little longer than our typical episode, but we just had a lot to say.
We're worth it, y'all. We're worth it. Come on.
You got to fold an extra load of laundry this time.
That's right. Drive around the block, sit in the driveway, listen to the end. It's all good because we are wrapping up now. And again, hit us up at hello@heydayservices.com if you would like another episode about this, if you found those tips helpful about how to educate up, or if there's some things that you would like to share. And as always, we're super glad that you chose to listen to the Fundraising Heyday podcast, whether this is day 1, episode 1 for you, or you have been with us, bless you, since the very beginning. Please, if you could follow and review Fundraising Heyday on Apple Podcasts, if that's where you listen, right? It could be on Spotify, where you could send a link to friends, colleagues about listening to us. And if you can't get enough of the Heyday stuff, get on to our new website, HAYDAY, heydayservices.com, and sign up for our newsletter that is the Heyday Hot Takes. You'll find out where we're speaking and training, but also trends, tips on raising more money through grants and fundraising, and some professional development.
Thank you again to our Season 6 sponsor, D.H. Leonard Consulting and Grant Writing Services. We appreciate their support in making grants less stressful. Visit their website, dhleonardconsulting.com, to download their latest resources today. We are so honored you chose time,
and we're grateful
today to spend time with us. You get what I mean. We hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks. We are talking with Erin Goodyear about marketing through social media. And she is just such a delightful human being in general, but she has such a calm way. I feel better about some of my video stuff I've been doing for our social media because, and I will say I've learned it all from her. So you're going to want to learn from Aaron too. So we'll see ya.
See ya.